Hello and welcome to anyone who's watching this video. This is a comparison between a Nielsen No4 smoothing plane and a Quangsheng No4 smoothing plane. Before I got these two planes, I often wondered what the comparison between them would be like. I know that some people think that the Quangsheng is a clone of the Nielsen, and it's not. Some people think it's a copy of the Nielsen, and it's not. They are two very different planes. On the face of it, they look the same, but closer inspection shows that they're quite a bit different in the size and such like. You might notice that these aren't the original handles on this Nielsen, because I've switched those out. Those are the Nielsen handles, but I find them that they're too tight for me. This bit here is too tight. I thought about reshaping it, taking more out of here and more out of here, but because of the value of the plane, I decided it was better to change the handles. So I switched them out for some vintage ones. These happen to come off a record plane. For me, it's a lot more comfortable now. There's a lot more room in it. It does require a little bit of adjustment. The knob, it requires a little bit of chamfering on the inside to get that to fit, and something to support, because that's a countersunk screw on the Nielsen. Whereas this is a record set of handles. They have more like a screw tube. So I did have to pack that to hold that, and I also had to re-drill. As you can see, I've filled the original hole. I had to re-drill that hole slightly because it's in at a slightly different angle. A little bit of work underneath, because the Stanleys and the records have like a dowel in this part to locate the handle, stop it twisting, where the Nielsen has more like a kind of a bar, like an oblong. So I had to just take a bit of a router out of there to get that to sit. But they're secure, they sit nice, and it's a lot more comfortable for me now. There's a lot more room in it. I do like the vintage handles. Right, so comparing the two. Looking at them like that, you might just say that they're the same thing. But if you put them side by side the other way, you can start to see that they're a different size altogether. It's difficult with this camera because it doesn't really show what I'm trying to explain. So let me turn them around the right way. The Nielsen's on the left and the Quangsheng's on the right. And if you put them together, you can see the difference in the length. It's quite considerable. That's the Quangsheng. By the way, I've also altered that handle. It was too tight. I took some out of here and some out of here to get it to right. So when the fronts are lined up, it's difficult with this camera to show, but you can see the difference in the length there. Even the mouth is slightly not quite in the same place. The Quangsheng is definitely not a direct copy of the Lie-Nielsen. Because of the difference in the length, the handles are also further apart. This is not a trick, a consequence of the angle of the camera. That is actually the difference in the length of the plane. So the distance between the handles, which is difficult to show with this type of camera, but there is the handle is further back on the Quangsheng. Just trying to get it into a position where you can maybe see the difference. Yeah, you can just about see it there. The difference in the length of the bed. So is there any significance between the two? Yes, there is. Weight-wise, they're nearly the same weight, which surprised me really, because with the Lie-Nielsen having bronze capping iron and a bronze frog, I would have expected it to be heavier, but there's hardly anything in between the weights of them. The Lie-Nielsen felt heavier when it had the original handles on, which is interesting to me, but since I put these handles on, they handle pretty much the same. They both fit together well. The cap irons and that have a nice action to them, and the blades are the same length usable, but the Quangsheng one is longer on the part of the blade that you can't use. I think that might be the difference in the length of the plane. That maybe the handles being slightly further apart, they've left the blade longer. That's about level there. They've left the blade longer to compensate for the fact that the handle's further away. Otherwise it might look as though the blade was short. The frogs and that are pretty similar. The Lie-Nielsen does have slightly more webbing here. It gives you the impression it's a slightly thicker frog, a slightly stronger frog. This webbing here is shallower. The adjusting wheel might appear to be the same, but the Quangsheng one is wider, it's deeper this way front to back, and it has a deeper knurling on it. The lateral adjustments are very similar. The idea of screwing a piece of brass onto that is a very similar idea, and they both have a wheel that turns on the end of the adjuster, like the old Stanleys and things used to have. So they are different, they're a different shape, the castings are a different shape. The Quangsheng one, what is obvious is that the Lie-Nielsen is obviously better finished. The castings, there's not much in the quality of them, I don't think, but Lie-Nielsen have what looks to me like CNC'd a bevel around the edge, which gives it a very neat finish, whereas the Quangsheng one is obviously been done by hand on maybe a sanding belt or something, and it's been done by hand, and you can see it's not as neat as the Nielsen one. Also, the Nielsen has a matte finish, whereas the Quangsheng one has a more of a, it's not really gloss, but it's a silk type finish, and that shows up. It shows up the casting roughness more than a matte one will. So which one is better made? Well, obviously, I think it'd be obvious that the Nielsen is the better made one. The thing that I've noticed the most is that the whole point of a bedrock design, people think that, or people, and myself included, maybe thought that the bedrock was a means of making the frog more stable to the base by having more surface area. But the real reason was purely so that you could adjust the mouth on the fly. So when the blade was in and the capping arm was on, you can get to these adjusters and move the frog backwards and forwards. For when people were using hand planes a lot more than we are now, and we're planing a lot of stuff up by hand, that was an advantage. And that's where you notice it starts to notice a difference in the accuracy of the machining. The Nielsen, the frog fits well in the width of the plane, so when you move, when you shunt the blade, the frog and the blade assembly backwards and forwards, it stays true to the bed in there. That remains the same because it's well machined and it's accurate. And that is where the Quangsheng one doesn't operate as well. The frog doesn't run in the bed as well, and if you've got the blade and everything in and you adjust the frog, it won't necessarily keep it dead true to that face. So the bedrock design on the Quangsheng doesn't operate in the way that it was intended to do originally, in that you could adjust the frog on the fly. You can, but then you've also got a bit of manoeuvrability in the frog here. So for me, it's easier to take that. You can adjust it roughly where you wanted it, but then it's easier to have a look along that bed and see how it fits. So that shows a slightly different accuracy in machining, but there's a big difference in the cost. Nielsen's they're around about in the UK they're around about 420. The Quangsheng's are about 170, and there is a Luban version of this, which is 140, and I haven't used one, so I can't fully vouch for it, but it looks to me to be the same plane, with some of the materials are slightly reduced, so it doesn't have cherry handles on it, and it doesn't have a stainless steel cap. It looks like it has a cheaper wooden handle and maybe more of a cast type cap, maybe not made out of stainless, possibly. Now for using them. Well, for a premium plane, then you have to give it to the Nielsen, because it is it's accurate and it's well made, and my only complaints are the handles, but it's a personal thing. One small detail I have noticed is with the Nielsen, when you look at the frog and the blade line up almost perfectly central and straight, and it's a well engineered, well machined piece. whereas the Quangsheng one doesn't quite have the same amount of accuracy. Don't get me wrong, it's well made. But if you're nitpicking, and you can see there that they're nearly all level there, the frog and the cap and the blade are level. Whereas on that side you can see the frog's slightly proud there. It doesn't make any difference to the way it works, but it does demonstrate the slight difference in the quality of the machining. Now using them, they apart from my personal preference of changing the handles, they both work very well. I've no complaints with either of them. The Lie-Nielsen is very it's almost like everything fits together. It's like a gun, if you like. If you've ever handled a gun for some purpose, they're well made. They click, everything locates together, and it locks in a kind of military style preciseness. And that shows. It's a nice thing to look at, and it's well made. It works well straight out the box. Just a bit of a sharpen. The handles for me are too tight. Well, that's just a personal thing. The Quangsheng works very well. It isn't quite as precise as the Lie-Nielsen. It isn't quite as well machined, or like I said about the gun type, accuracy of its manufacture isn't the same, but it works very well, and I've no complaints with it. Out the box, a quick sharpen, and it's ready to go. Again, the handles are an issue for me, but I like things to fit me personally. I like to be comfortable when I'm using a tool. The one other thing that is of note is that this also has an extra screw in the handle, which is like the 4.5 Lie-Nielsens do. So value wise, now it could never be a one size fits all. You know, the Lie-Nielsen is, the price of it is astronomical. Is it worth it? It's a difficult one to justify. £420 for a hand plane is difficult to justify. For me, who is a tradesman and interested in tools and things, it's still hard to justify the cost of it. It's a lovely thing. I'm not knocking it. I have no complaints about it. The Quangsheng, again, 170. It's nowhere near the price of that, obviously, but it's still good money for a plane, and I think it's probably at the top of its price range, and probably that one is as well. Any more than that, and they get into the point where it's questionable as to whether you want to spend that sort of money on a hand plane. My personal opinion is that not everybody wants to be taking a Lie-Nielsen to work, or if you're on site or you're working somewhere where the conditions might not be ideal, even where you work in a workshop, it might not be secure. it's a lot of money to have lying around, and it's the risk of having them stolen is a big concern of mine, because if somebody steals your Stanley plane that cost you, I don't know, 60 quid or something, it's not so bad, but if someone steals one of these, it hurts. So the Nielsen isn't for everybody. Does it work any better than the Quangsheng one for planing wood? No, not really. The actual performance of these two for planing timber up, there isn't any difference. The Nielsen is a mighty fine tool, but if you have one, and you might have a workshop or a garage where the conditions aren't ideal, and it rusts. I mean, this ductile, I'm going to make a video about this ductile steel that's used on many new planes now. It pits terribly badly. So if you're going to abandon it in the garage for months on end and not use it, or you're going to take it to work and knock it about, you probably can't justify the cost of that. Maybe if you're a cabinet maker and you're working in a nice workshop, and then, you know, a furniture maker, then and you've got good security, then it probably makes, you can probably justify it. A more, I would say, if you've got to class those as high end. If you class those as mid-range, you won't go far wrong with one of them. For the cost, you can use it straight out the box, just a quick sharp, and then it's a way to go. It's made out of the same material, so it will pit like it's ductile steel, and it pits badly if you happen to neglect it or leave it in the garage or workshop, whatever you got, and forget about it. You might have a shock when you come back. So those are comparing the two planes. I like them both. It's a matter of what serves your needs. I mean, if I could only have one, I would probably pick this one, the Quangsheng, only because it's more affordable. I could take it anywhere and not worry too much about it. This is just too valuable for some jobs. It's if you lose it, you damage it, you get it stolen, it's a big loss. So for knocking about, I'd probably go with that one. So once again, about the design side of them, they're not the same plane. They are completely different, and I was looking for words to describe it. It's not a clone and it's not a copy, but then the other word I came up was just plagiarize. Well, the original Stanley Bedrock, which I happen to have one here, this one is not all original. This is a 4.5, because that's all I've been able to pick up at sensible money. This is the original Bedrock. Well, the first Bedrocks had a curved side on them, but this one with the flat-sided one is the one people tend to refer to as a Bedrock, the most desirable one. Again, it's if you wanted to look for an original, you'd be looking at this. So you could say that the others were copies of this, but I mean, this is probably 100 years old. It's in relatively good condition. The thing that impresses me the most is, I don't know whether you can see that, but try and catch some light on it. Yeah, it's there. If I can catch some light, there you go. they catch the light on it. Where someone's finger has been rubbing on the cast iron, it's actually polished it. And that, so where someone's had the finger for literally over 100 years, it actually polished the cast iron, and that is just, well, it's unbelievable to me, but it just goes to show how much work's in one of these and how much they were used. This isn't the original capping iron. I bought this as a bare bones one, really. I've built it up out of parts, and unfortunately the cap screw's seized and I can't shift it. I've tried, I'm worried about breaking the frog, so I've put this cap iron on it, which works, but it works great. But this just, I'm only showing that one to show where the design came from. So if we talk about being plagiarised, I don't know, from if you talk about the original, the Stanley, and then you go Lee Nielsen, and then you go Clifton, and then you go Quangsheng. You could say that they were all plagiarised, possibly from the original Stanley, but if you take that as the base design, the Lee Nielsen's based on that, that's based on that in basic design, and so is the Quangsheng. They all come back to the Stanley. The Clifton one, although it's a bedrock, it does have a different shape to it. It doesn't have the flat-sided bed, but it is still a bedrock design. My personal opinion is that the Clifton is the most beautiful hand plane that was ever made. This is a green Clifton. They've now taken them to like a charcoal colour, but I can't bring myself to use that one at work because it's just too pretty. I bought it with the intention of using it every day, but I can't take that and do my job with it, because I just couldn't see it being knocked around. So that's my impression of the Lee Nielsen and the Quangsheng. It was a question I was asking myself before I got in a position where I can have both of them, and I hope it's of help to somebody, and thank you for watching, take care.